My name's Ed Folsom, and I'm here today to inform the audience about tariffs and exports and imports. So to start off, I grabbed a definition of tariff for everyone, and this is according to export.gov, which is our government website which tracks exports and imports. So a tariff, which is also known as an import duty, is a tax levied on imported goods being imported from other countries. So exported goods from one country going to another country, the country that's receiving them will put a tax on those goods. So a lot of people don't understand how tariffs work. There's many different kinds of tariffs, and they vary based on the product that you're receiving. So one product going to Japan might get taxed 2%, while a different product might get taxed 10%. So it's kind of hard to say what the flat tariff rate is, but what they've done is they take an average of all the different tariffs for different products within a country, and then they come out with an average tariff rate. So it varies based on the country. So I have a couple countries here. China's average rate is 7.69%. Russia has 5.99%. Australia 3.2%. The US 2.9%. Japan 2.1%. And the United Kingdom's 1.85%. So you can see it varies, the average there. And you can see rates on specific products go all the way up towards 25%, stuff like that. So if you notice, the United Kingdom's had the lowest tariff rate. They also, it's a little skewed because the United Kingdom's has a free trade agreement with all of Europe. So they import and export freely to all those countries within Europe. But I gathered this information from a website called Index Mundi, which is a database that collects information on all the countries around the world, and they gather their information from the World Bank, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, and the World Trade Organization. So if you look at this graph here, the majority of countries export more than they import. So this is a graph of Japanese cars. And as you can see, the number of exports to the US for Japan is 2 million cars. They export 364,000 to Asia, 778,000 to the European Union. So they're exporting about 3 million cars, while they're only importing about 200,000. So you see, they're only from the U.S. they only get 14,000 cars. This is in 2010, I believe. No, excuse me, 2008. 14,000 cars, 66,000 cars, 140. So all in all, they're only bringing in about 200,000 cars or around there. So you'd be like, wow, they're exporting 5 million cars, but they're only, or excuse me, 3 million cars, but they're only importing 200,000. Well, that's not because of the tariff rates. The tariff rates in Japan are actually pretty good. They're only about 5% of the cars. But part of it has to do with the country as a whole. Japan's a lot smaller, so cars, people don't need the cars as much. There's pretty good public transportation in Japan. It's not like the United States where it's spread out everywhere and you got to drive no matter where you're going. And you also got to think Japanese car companies is a huge business. You got Toyota producing thousands and thousands and thousands of cars. Also, Japan only has a population of about 125 million, whereas the United States is about 350 million plus, and then you look at China, 1.3 billion population. So China, on the other hand, only sells about a couple thousand US cars a year. And part of that is definitely due to the tariff rate. The tariff rate in China is about 22%. They actually just raised, according to Keith Bradshaw, they just raised their tariff rates in 2011. This is a write-up from the New York Times, and they increased their tariff rates. So if you were to buy just a regular SUV that would maybe sell for about $27,000 in the United States, in China, if you tried to buy that same car, it would be equivalent to about $85,000 buying it here. So the tariff rates really crank those prices up. And that disparity in the tariff rates there really severely hurts U.S. sales of cars in China. So as far as tariffs go, you kind of have to analyze the effect of them. So China is really, you got to wonder why do they raise their tariffs so much? Why do they not want to sell U.S. cars? There's different reasons why countries might want to raise their tariffs. The first reason might be like strenuous relationships. The Chinese and the United States haven't always had the greatest relationships, especially now. We're kind of in a little bit of an economic competition. a mini Cold War almost between China and the United States. We might have strenuous relations with them, so they're not going to want to sell our products. They're going to be like, well, if you do import products to us, we're going to tax the crap out of them. Another reason to raise tariffs might be to bolster domestic production of certain products. So, say China might be trying to raise their production of cars, and they want to bolster the China car economy. They might tax everyone else trying to send them cars so that people in their country only want to buy Chinese cars because they're the cheapest and the easiest to purchase. And a third reason why people might raise their tariff rates on certain products might be an excess of products. So say in Russia has a lot of minerals, a lot of metals, and that's the biggest export is minerals. So they send out minerals all across the world. They probably don't need much. So they don't want people trying to sell minerals to them since they already have an overflow of the minerals. So that might be a third reason why people raise their tariffs. So I guess there's an analysis of tariffs you got to look at too in terms of whether they're good or bad for a country. As far as pros go, for the domestic producers of products, it's going to reduce competition. So if I'm a Chinese car company trying to sell Chinese cars in China, and I don't have to worry about United States cars coming in and people buying those cars, it's going to raise or lower the competition, so I'll be able to raise prices on my cars. So United States cars cost $85,000 in China, whereas they might be able to sell their cars for a whole lot cheaper and still be making a good profit in China. Also, those domestic producers, those same domestic producers, as their businesses grow and they sell more, they might start to hire more people, which would lower the unemployment rate in the country. And consumer spending will rise. Why? Because the consumers are spending more money on Chinese cars because the prices would get rise because of the reduced competition. And also government revenues. Obviously, the government's going to make a little bit more money if they tax more on the imports coming in. On the other hand, there's cons to imports and exports. The cons might be a pricing increase will also count as a consumer reduction. So let's say these cars are starting to cost a little bit more because the Chinese businesses are growing. Well, that means that out of pocket for the consumers, they're not making quite as enough money because they have to spend a little bit more. And as a result of this, other industries in the country might suffer. If people have to spend more money to get their cars, they're not going to be able to spend as much money to get other things. So in general, it's agreed upon by all the people that high tariff rates tend to do more bad than good. It's better to have closer to free trade in general. So in conclusion, I just want to go over the main points. Tariffs are a tax on imported goods, and they can vary based on the product. So certain products will be higher and some will be lower based on the country and also based on what the product is and how the country wants to tax those products. And they can also be beneficial or harmful, although the general consensus among most economists is that they are harmful to the economy. And I hope everyone learned a little bit about tariffs today. Thanks.